crescent, first quarter waxing gibbous.
Phases of the moon.
Full moon winding gibbous, last quarter winding crescent.
Phases of the moon.
It has long been debated whether or not the United States actually landed on the moon, or whether or not it was a hoax concocted by NASA and filmed by Stanley Kubrick. It is made for many conspiracy theories and films that I have found very enjoyable. However, about 10 years ago, when I was studying physics, I realized that the math would not allow man to enter space. In fact, man is trapped within the inner orbit of the Earth. That is based on Schwarzschild theories of black holes and Kruskal's math that shows that all atoms and all material made of atoms are configured in a white hole, black hole configuration in 2D space. Therefore, I formed the theory that the inner Earth atmosphere was a white hole, and everything we see that represents outer space, the black firmament with stars poking through, is a black hole. And the black hole, which is the shell around the inner Earth atmosphere, occasionally pokes through. There is a light source called stars, and these are fusion points where the white hole outside of the black hole is punching through, and we can see these photons emerge through the dark firmament of the black hole universe. So when I fell upon FE, Astronomy's magnetic Earth film, I became quite excited at what their data discloses, and it's very consistent with my theory. However, it added an additional dimension, and that dimension was tracking the pathway of photons trapped within inner Earth's atmosphere, because these photons bounce in between the Earth and to the outer shell, which is known as the dome, glass ceiling, the glass dome of the Bible. Photons are bounced back in very intricate and interesting patterns, which their documentary shows. It also presents data and then asks the theory of what does this data mean. Now, Schwarzschild's equations and metrics draw a flowering effect of gravity. And you can see the force of gravity is rotating around a central point, but when it hits that central point, it comes out, but it's always a turn of a screw, which they like to turn to the turn of the clock, and it's rotating around, and it flowers. If you look at the flower petals, they will follow this force of gravity. So now we're going to explain what is gravity. Gravity is force. So these are going to be lines of force. What is the force going to carry? Well, the force carries the lighter photon. Okay, the photon is going to be following these trajectories because it's just a little massless particle that just shines bright. And gravity is this heavy pulling force into its center. And the photon is just going to be following this. It's not going to be doing any of the work. It's gravity, the force of gravity, like a train, flowering around. You can say, hey, look, there's a train that's going around on a flowered spoke. Or you can say this is a ride at the park, and you're hanging by a rope. But the photon is going to be carried by the force of gravity, because photons don't have any force. They only reflect or radiate. And what does a photon reflect or radiate? It reflects the image. So you're going to have the image of whatever this atom or photon is seeing carried in this roundabout way. And so this is why gravity appears to be a force that is circular or globular, because it's carrying this photon so quickly that the image becomes circular. It becomes like a Christmas ball, because you know how fast this is? Well, you know, it's the speed of light, faster than we can even imagine, faster than our eyes can see. So for all intents and purposes, the Earth is indeed a globe. And why is it a globe? And why do we have to follow these arcs? Because we have to follow the trajectory of gravity. And what a plane's going to do, it's going to come up here to its outward perimeter of where this gravitational force is hitting something that pushes it back toward the center. So this is a membrane all around here the gravity is working with. So, and then you're going to have this is an interior membrane, and this is the center of the this is called the vesica Pisces. This is where no energy of any strength enters. There is energy in here, but it's energy so fine and so it's undetectable to our instruments. So we can only detect the force that is the heavier force, which is the gravitational force. So here we go again. So a plane's going to take off from the Earth, and it's going to take off, and then it's going to be it's going to be flying around, but it's going to be jumping. It's going to be able to use this force, but also avoid hitting the Earth, because as it goes down, there's an upward. As it goes down, there's an upward force. As there's a downward force, there's an upward. So the plane is going to be able to maintain, because the Schwarzschild metric is smaller than the atom, right? So you're looking at that Planck's dimension. So you're not going to see any of these atoms jump about on the plane, but the plane's going to be able to carry this outward trajectory around the perimeter of whatever level it flies to, and then maintains its level within this. Okay, so gravity is a force. A photon carries the image. Why is the Earth look round? Well, the photon is flipping so quickly that it flip, and it just creates this beautiful ball, circling ball, that makes the globe look around. Everything becomes rounded at its edges. All cells are rounded because gravity, it's called conservation of energy, and gravity forces the rounded edges. So, but if the calculations are correct, what is occurring is it actually, if you want to know the actual shape of the Earth, it's going to be square, as you need 4 points to create this interior circle, okay? And these are going to be the gravitational corners of every cell, and we're not going to be able to see them because energy is so dense that it's a black hole. So what happens when it reaches its maximum angular momentum in 8 steps? It's going to divide, conservation of energy, and it's going to share a perimeter with its new baby cell. So you're going to have a duplication of cells. And what's that duplication of cells going to be? It's going to be in this flower configuration. So you're going to have a cross come here, you have a cross here, cross here. And on each one of these crosses, there's going to be a two-dimensional image of the photon. But as you look at it, it's going to look like a bubble. Because you know how you see colors in the bubble like a soap bubble? That's because it's moving so fast, and those colors are moving so fast. And that little photon is just creating this beautiful round image. Now you say, well, but photons have no energy. No, but what is the force of gravity? Why we get smashed by gravity is because the photon is massless. But if we get in the center of this moving train of gravity, we're going to just crash in like the train's going to hit us. That's called pressure. So yeah, if we was just a photographic image of the photon does not have any pressure, but the gravitation on which it is traveling is the strength of let's say a moving train that's going to crush us if we get in the way of this force on which this little photon is being carried. Okay, the additional part of Newtonian physics, which keeps the moon moving, is when the Earth and the moon come in close proximity, what creates the force, according to Newtonian physics, is that they exchange energy. So the moon is going to exchange energy with the Earth, and the Earth is going to crush the moon by sending all of its energy, which is more massive than the moon, okay? But what occurs is that the moon bounces back, absorbs the Earth's energy by bouncing back into its outward ellipse. So as it comes forward and these two objects approach each other, the moon, Earth throws out its entire energy, and the moon throws out its entire energy, and the moon just bounces back. And the moon can only approach so far as it can absorb whatever portion of energy that the Earth is sending it, and that's why it's an inverse proportion of length to distance and energy to distance. So that if you go back and read Newton, there's not just a effect of rolling around like a rolling pinball or a balloon or something like that. It is an exchange of energy, and that is why the moon cannot approach too far, because it gets pushed back by the energy that it's absorbing from the Earth. The force of gravity, as you recall, doesn't end up at the perimeter. Once it hits at its center, it bounces back at, according to Schwarzschild, at a 45-degree angle and comes out at a 45-degree angle. And so what you're going to have is you're going to have the six-pointed star. And according to Schwarzschild, a gravitational force is coming at one point on the square, same with the south. And once it hits its equator, it just doesn't continue. It repels itself going in opposite directions. So these two forces are going to hit and then bounce to the right. One bounce, the positive is going to go to the right, the negative is going to go to the left. And then once it hits its outer perimeter again, which is the edge of the Earth, it's going to make a 45-degree angle and come back in. And then once again, it's going to hit and make another 45-degree angle and come out. So you're going to have this constant turning, which creates the torus or the flower effect of the Schwarzschild metric. And all energy flows in the same direction. That's why they call it sacred geometry, because everything is at right angles, but they get smaller and smaller and smaller at 45, at 90 degrees, 45 degrees, and half of 45 degrees. Okay, 23 and a half degrees. Okay, so anyway, that's how the forces of energy, and they call them lines of force of gravity, work. And gravity is the strongest force we can measure. Not the weakest. What they're talking about is the gravitational constant. That's a very weak force because there's so much of Earth to absorb the gravity that there's less of that excess energy, and that excess energy is the gravitational constant, which is not gravity. Constant only measures the excess gravity that needs to be absorbed by a neighboring star, a neighboring planet, or the neighboring universe. Everything is an exchange of energy. It's called conservation of energy. So the Earth has to release energy and absorb energy. Release energy, absorb energy. Just like our heart, we're releasing energy, absorbing it.
So the real sun is a source coming from outside of the so-called firmament, which probably uses light polarization that is projected into the magnetic field and rendered through the atmosphere. It is no coincidence that all sun arcs combined create this torus-like field, and this is version 1.0. As soon as we find out how to use equal distance 3D vectoring and a formula on the angles in the data sheets from observations, we can then get a true shape in second-by-second motion in the field lines. We animated this in what we call the cosmic breath of flat Earth, and this shows that by simply increasing the current in the field from the North Pole, you then push the field south, and by lowering the current, it flows back north again. It can also be pushed back and forth by an outside magnetic field from beyond the Antarctic, 90 degrees south latitude. If we animate all sun positions over a year, the animation gives the impression of a wave going around the field like an outside source pushing and pulling on the field and projecting its image, that being the sun or moon, in it. We do not know yet what, where, and how this outside source is mechanically working, so to speak, but from an engineer's perspective, everything that works like a machine or clock must have a basic principle and laws of physics to discover its nature. We just have to figure out where to go from here and what experiments can be derived to either build on this or modify the basic concept.
According to Astronomy, their data suggests the sun is a projection from another source. But what is that source? I agree with Astronomy. Both the sun and the moon are indeed projections from another light source. My working theory, consistent with the FE data, sun and moon are projections of the Earth's light. Yes, the sun and moon are projections of the Earth's own light. You see, the Earth is made up of atoms, and atoms are in constant motion. And as they are in constant motion, they need to constantly absorb and emit excess energy. And as a group, the atoms will work in tandem with each other. So if the Earth is this huge ball of atoms absorbing and emitting light, then the sun appears to be the reflected photons, and the moon is the reflected excess electrons shedded by the Earth as it traverses across its motion wheel. The sun is the reflection of the photons from the Earth as the Earth emits its photons, and the moon is the reflected electrons as the Earth emits its electrons. It is like the Earth is exhaling electrons and inhaling photons, exhaling electrons, inhaling photons. So I'm in just agreement with the ancient Egyptians. They believed there were four phases of the moon, and there was also 4 phases of the sun. And the moon would pulse and throw its energy over to the sun, and the sun would pulse. But it's all done through the mediation of the Earth. So the Earth is throwing its photons, and that reflects the sun, and then the sun pushes it back to the Earth, and the Earth emits its electrons, and that creates the reflection of the moon, and it seesaws back and forth in a constant pattern of emission, absorption, emission, contraction, propulsion, contraction, propulsion, and there you have the beating of the heart. As I said, and as Joseph Smith once said, the sun is a reflection from another planet. And what is that planet? That planet is Earth. So that's my working theory for the flat earthers and the FE magnetic Earth, that the sun and the moon's source projection of their light is the Earth itself, as it sheds and absorbs its excess photons and electrons as it moves through its cycles. And as it absorbs and emits these excess energy, it redistributes its positive and negative monopoles. And where does it get these monopoles? They're absorbed through the field lines or the gravitational force lines from outer space. And these monopoles, having only one positive and not a negative, or one negative and not a positive, can absorb through that glass dome, because the glass dome is made up of dipoles, and the monopoles from positive and negative energy are monopoles. So it's absorbed and it comes into the center of the Earth, and the Earth, through extreme pressure, combines and crunches and combines and fuses into atoms of electrons, protons, and neutrons. And the reason why it does this is it is conserving its energy and transforming it into a lighter state of matter. So the working theory is the sun and moon are approximately the same size. The sun and moon are the same distance from the Earth, and the sun and moon aren't really objects. They are reflected light from the Earth as it sheds its excess photons and then absorbs its excess electrons, and sheds its excess electrons and absorbs its excess electrons, making this a bouncing heartbeat pattern between the sun, Earth, and moon, moon, Earth, and sun. And that is my working theory, and I believe it's consistent with the ancient Egyptians and even what the Mormon prophet Joseph Smith indicated in some of his writings.
Attention, please. Attention. There's been a slight change in the teetotaler lineup. Catching, Bugs Bunny. Left field, Bugs Bunny. Right field, Bugs Bunny. Pitching, Bugs Bunny. Third base, Bugs Bunny. Center field, Bugs Bunny. First base, Bugs Bunny. Shortstop, Bugs Bunny. Second base, Bugs Bunny.